Mitch from Pick Dogs here with Chris and Ron here with Week 6 college football action. Man, it's the college football season. It just flies by. We're in the first week of October, and the college football regular season ends the weekend after Thanksgiving. So about 2 months left here of college football. A lot of teams will be halfway through the season after this week, and we'll get a good idea as to who's going to be bowl teams, who's going to not be bowl teams. And, I think starting, next week, we start to get some of these more weekday games going on. Last night we had a weekday game, but that was because of a cancellation, and probably a game that, just showed that some of these games get a lot more interest if you put them in at the right time in the right spot. And, last night it was perfect timing for that game. And, if they would have played it on Saturday, probably wouldn't have gotten 1/10 of the interest that it got last night. Chris, how's it going this week? Any teams that are dead to you, or any teams that you think, maybe owe you one?
No, there's a few that are dead to me. I don't know if we have enough time to go down the full list, but I think Fresno State dead to me after last week's showing against UConn. I know they had a backup quarterback in, but against UConn, for me, that's still no excuse. Jim Moore Jr. starting to maybe turn things around for UConn where they can at least win 3 games consistently a year. But I'd say Fresno State's dead to me. And I want to say that, who was it that Nebraska beat last week? I want to say it was Indiana. Indiana's dead to me after they lose by 2 scores to Nebraska. Nebraska, not a good football team. And Tom Allen strikes again. So Indiana probably dead to me as well.
I stayed away from that game. It just looked fishy to me, and I just stayed the hell away because, I hate both those teams so much. Ron, how about you? Anyone dead to you, or anyone, that you think should be dead, taken behind the woodshed?
I think that Nebraska game was probably the only game I won on that entire 100-game card. After a good first 4 weeks, very, very poor Week 5 showing for me. So looking to bounce back this week, and it was a good start to the season, so we can afford to have a clunker here and there. But definitely looking to right my wrongs this week, and looking for a nice big Friday and Saturday card in college football.
Anyone that's ever bet on any sport, and I said this about my NFL performance last Sunday, and I don't make any excuses for it, but I will say anyone that's ever bet on sports and does it consistently, especially that does it professionally for a living, anything like that, that has to do picks every single week and every single day and all that other stuff. You've been taken behind the woodshed, before. And it's like the only guys that haven't are the Twitter guys or the guys in our YouTube comments. They seem to never lose, But anyways, we've got a nice card going on this week. Let's just get right into tomorrow night's action. Rutgers against those same Nebraska Cornhuskers. We got Memphis against Houston. We've got Nevada against Colorado State, and San Jose State against UNLV. So we have bad against bad, and we have decent against decent. I think is the way that this one works out, because I think if you can tell me who's the 2 worst teams in the country, I think that Nevada and Colorado State are in the discussion. They might not be the worst of the worst, but Colorado State, they got woodshedded by Sac State last week, 41-10. And Nevada lost to Incarnate Word, who had lost their quarterback. So who the hell even knows? With these teams, that Nebraska defense too. Chris, what do you think of these things?
Yeah, there's a couple that I like here. I like the under between Nebraska and Rutgers. Each of the last 3 meetings has gone under, but more importantly, this season, you just have a Rutgers team that is far more defense first. And I think that's just how they're going to be playing their game here. And I think Nebraska, not a good offense whatsoever, even though they got that big win over Indiana last week. I could easily see this game finishing 17-14, whichever way you have it going. So in a hard-hitting Big Ten game, I like the under in that one. And I've got a construction crew on standby. We may have to take Clayton Tune off of my Mount Rushmore. We'll have to see. But I'm going with Memphis in this one. There is something inherently wrong with the Houston Cougars right now. And Memphis just a far better team on both sides of the football here for me. So I'm going to go with the Memphis Tigers here. I think they win this one by at least a touchdown and add to Houston's misery in this one.
Ron, you want to add to Chris's misery here?
Well, I will say I really liked last Friday's card in college, and I like this one quite a bit as well. I think San Jose State laying the points. That's where I'm leaning right now. When you look at UNLV, they've been they're not really a program known for doing too much on the football field, but 4-1 start to the season. That's exactly what you'd love to see from a program on the rise, and I think they're on the rise overall. But I still think they have a lot of question marks on both sides of the ball. And New Mexico last week, they covered that game. It was an 11-point final score, but the game was far closer than what the final score said. It was a pick six at the end of it to dress up the score a little bit, but New Mexico still covered easily. They were winning at halftime, I believe, 17-6 or 17-9, excuse me. They were outgaining them. And New Mexico's offense has not done really much at all this season. So for UNLV to give up those 20 points, almost 300 yards of offense, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it is for a New Mexico team, I don't love that. And San Jose State's defense has been really good this season. Last 2 weeks, giving up 253 and 201 total yards to two FBS schools in Wyoming and Western Michigan. And Western Michigan, we know, has a solid offense. So San Jose State's defense, their secondary really playing well. I think their offense does enough here to win this game and cover the spread.
When I look at college football and I get into this time of the year where it's like we have some data under our belt to work with and all those kind of things, it still always comes back to the same thing. And I've been watching college football a long time. I'm older than both these guys combined. And the thing is that, the game has changed. We've gone to spread offenses. Obviously, the game's a lot higher scoring and all these other things. But at the end of the day, the game is always the same. It's always the same. The most important things are blocking and tackling. After that, running the football and playing defense. And that is the game, and it's run defense versus, run defense and running the football. This is where you key and, blocking and tackling. And it's like, Urban Meyer, who I've been, critical of his off the field behavior since we have ever talked about him at all. But when you see him coach a team, and he did it at Florida, he did it at Ohio State, and he did it at Utah, when he finds a play that works, he just keeps doing it until they stop it. It looks boring, it's terrible, but he'll run the same play 25 times in a row and say, if they can't stop it, why would I do anything else? And it makes a lot of sense. So when you find a team that can't defend the run like Nebraska, you got to expect that Rutgers is going to just run. And I know they don't have Ray Rice, but you have to say that Rutgers, when you look at their defensive numbers here, right, in this game, well, not in this game, when you just look at their defensive numbers overall, and you say, wow, 18th in yards allowed per game, 27th against the pass, 19th against the run. So they're 61st in points allowed. But the thing is that they just lost 49-0 or something last week, right? So you have a game where they lost 49-0 involved in, 5 games that they've played? So 1/5 of their games is a rout. It's kind of like a baseball pitcher at the beginning, his first time out, that gives up 6 runs in 4 innings and gets yanked, whereas ERA looks like it's like 35. So Rutgers' defense is actually even better than what it looks like on paper, while Nebraska's defense is just an absolute sieve. And while Rutgers' rushing offense isn't much to speak of, man, we saw it last night what a bad run defense looks like, They can't stop anybody. It don't matter. I like Rutgers in this one. I think they just grind it out. I think that Nebraska defense gets dragged up and down the field all night long. Going to be ugly in Piscataway, which is normally a beautiful place to go this time of year, especially. I like the Club Med there. How about you, Chris? You like the Club Med in Piscataway? It's always the one. It's like my wife's always like, "Where do you want to go to on vacation?" I'm always like, "Let's go to Club Med in Piscataway." What exit?
I'm a fan of Edison, New Jersey myself. It's a nice, quiet area.
Yeah, I think
the Edison Museum.
I do think Ron is onto something in that San Jose State UNLV, and I also think that I wouldn't lay 3.5 points with Nevada anytime soon against anybody. They're terrible. Go to our next set of games. Interesting one on the Bayou. LSU taking on Tennessee here. Tennessee 4-0, LSU 4-1. Remember that blocked extra point against Florida State in the last second? Man, they could have been, well, it would have been overtime. Who knows what would have happened, but potentially 5-0, right? Maryland against Purdue. Purdue coming off the big win against Minnesota. And, when we look at Purdue, man, that Syracuse game that they lost, I had Syracuse in that one, so I can't complain. But let's just say, I think that might be one where I got lucky. That a couple of calls might have gone my way.
Some late penalties.
Yeah, so yeah, it was a lot of them, right? It was like one of those games. I mean, it seems that I'm always on the wrong end of those, so I'll gladly accept it. But it just seemed to be one of those games. Also, Purdue, we saw them against Penn State, where they also kind of were in that game the whole way and did it in Maryland. Once again, they got some defensive issues there. But anyways, we'll get into it in a little bit. We got Florida against Missouri. These teams seem to play each other an awful lot. And it's normally a little bit, it's normally not a very pretty game. Oklahoma against Texas. When's the last time the Sooners have been getting a touchdown against the Longhorns? I'm going to guess it's been probably 20 years. Probably since Vince Young was there. That's my guess. Virginia versus Louisville. We'll go two more. Mississippi State. We'll do all the 12 o'clocks. Mississippi State versus Arkansas. Indiana, Tom Allen's Hoosiers take on Michigan. Got Kansas getting a touchdown against TCU coming off of that blitzing of Oklahoma. But they're both undefeated, yet Kansas is the higher-ranked team. Bowling Green and Buffalo. Georgia State, Georgia Southern. Oof, you don't want to. I'm not going. Oh, we're past the 12 o'clock slot. Chris, any of these games?
Yeah, there's a few in this one. First, I'm going to say that Purdue was on the other side of you with Dino Babers with the slide the paper across the table. You're like, I'll graciously accept this one. But
it was right. It was like some very odd calls in that one, and that Purdue wide receiver, they could not cover him. I mean, he was wide open. It's like the last drive of that game. If we go back to the recap of that game, that Purdue-Syracuse, and you look at the last drive, it was like pass interference, defensive hold, 2-yard run touchdown. It was really, they only gained 2 yards the entire drive. 80 yards of field covered, they gained 2 yards.
But I think it started with an unsportsmanlike conduct.
That's right. And that's right. The unsportsmanlike conduct after the touchdown and got the ball in the 40. But then it was like pass interference, defensive holding, right? All of these things. And then the last thing, then finally Syracuse ran it in. It was like 8 yards or something.
Yeah.
Right. But it was every single yard that they gained on that drive was on penalty.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous. And I had Syracuse in that game. That's how bad it, That's how bad the fishing. I'm gonna see if I can find it.
Yeah. But anyways, for this time slot, I like Florida laying the points against Missouri. I just don't think Missouri has enough in the tank to battle for a third straight week after back-to-back soul crushers in games that you could argue Missouri should have won. They should have beat Auburn, but Missouri decided to, gift wrap a win for the Tigers in that one. And Missouri, they had Georgia dead to rights last week, and then Georgia, found a way to suck one out. So I think Florida just the better team here. And like Rich said, these games are usually blowouts. Last year, I think the game went to overtime, but prior to that, I think the previous 8 meetings have been decided by an average of 17 points per game. So I go Florida at home in this one. I'm also going to go with Mississippi State laying the points against Arkansas. Big question mark for Arkansas, KJ Jefferson. Will he play? He was dealing with concussion issues last week against Alabama. And if he can't go, that's only going to make life worse against a Mississippi State team. It's going to have a field day against this Arkansas secondary that's, I think, 120th in the country in terms of defending the pass. Against a Mike Leach offense, that's not what you want. I'm going to take Mississippi State. I think they win that one by 2 touchdowns. And I'm going to go with the over. And I'm also going to lean towards the underdog in TCU, Kansas. I think it's just going to be a high-scoring game. TCU, obviously, it was Sonny Dykes leading the charge. The offense is what this team does. And, Kansas, well, they haven't done me wrong yet. This is a team that's absolutely lighting it up, and I never thought I'd say the words highly ranked and Kansas in the same sentence. But it's sort of where we are. I think at worst, this is a 4 or 3-point win for TCU. If the Jayhawks don't find a way to win another one outright, and crazy through 6 weeks, we could say that they could be bowl eligible. But it's where we are. I like Kansas plus the points, but I also like the over there.
Kansas has had some good teams throughout the years. It's just rare, but they had them. Mark Mangino The Mark Mangino Kansas teams were the last ones that were good. My favorite thing, that was 19, that was 2008-ish, 2007, 2008. Of course, the Oklahoma fans made a meme of him as a Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade balloon. That was pretty funny. They're a creative bunch, Sooner Nation. Anyways, Ron, how about you? What do you think of this slot?
Well, to answer your question before about when Texas was favored the last against Oklahoma by a touchdown, well, the last time they were favored in a game against Oklahoma was 2009. They were 3-point favorites and they won by 3, so they pushed. But the last time they were favorites by more than a touchdown was back in 2005. They were 14-point favorites and they covered the spread. They won 45-12 in that one. So Oklahoma's been
won the
favored
national
since
championship
2009.
that year. Won the national championship that year.
Yep. So a little history, but I'm going to have to disagree with my good friend, Mr. Ruffalo. I like TCU laying the points. I just think TCU is far better on both sides of the ball. I think, you could say, oh, this could be a letdown spot after TCU blew out Oklahoma, but I don't expect a letdown going into playing a team that's ranked, playing a team that's one of the more public favorite teams, and playing a team that's going to be having college game day. I think TCU will be getting up for this game just as much as Kansas will. So I think the excitement level will certainly be there for both teams, but I like TCU. I think they're just the more talented team. I also like Florida laying the points against Missouri. Florida, it's been a weird season for them. They look so good against Utah, then they look miserable against Kentucky offensively. Didn't look good against USF at all. But against Tennessee, we saw Anthony Richardson actually start to really air it out. I mean, I think he had 400-plus passing yards in that one. I don't think Missouri's defense is just going to be able to hold up here, and I don't think the offense does enough either. I like Florida to win by 2 touchdowns.
I like LSU against Tennessee. I think that you give Brian Kelly a chance against the 128th ranked pass defense in the nation. I think he's going to find a hole there no matter who his quarterback is. And I think his quarterback here is not bad. I think he's getting better and better. I think Kelly is a good coach. And I say this all the time on these shows, that there are certain coaches that kind of just fill out the batting card, kind of like Aaron Boone does for the Yankees, kind of fill out the lineup card. And then there are other coaches that actually coach players up, and then you have other guys that are just really good X's and O's guys, like Nick Saban is and Bill Belichick is. But what you have here in this one, Brian Kelly is a really good coach. He's a good X and O guy, but he's also a guy that coaches guys up, and he can do that at LSU. And I think he's got a quarterback here that I think he can do enough against that Tennessee team. And I think at home on the Bayou, SEC football Saturday, it's like, oh man, this is just, one of those spots. And, I don't think Tennessee's going to run the table, and this just looks like a likely spot for them to go down. I do kind of like Florida a little bit in that one against Mizzou. I think Mizzou is an improving program. I just think that they're maybe a year away from being a real competitor. I like Purdue against Maryland. I think Maryland's just got way too many holes on defense, and I think Purdue just, we're getting some good value there. It does look a little bit like a sucker line in there, but you give me that 97th ranked pass defense of Maryland against that Purdue quarterback. Man, that's not a good matchup for the Terps. And then when you look at Oklahoma against Texas, you give me any chance to. You give me 7 points and Steve Sarkisian on the other side of there, I'll take it any day of the week. I don't care who they're playing. I'm going to take Oklahoma to bounce back in this one. My guess is the quarterback's out for this one, and that's why the line is so high. They do have – will say this about Texas. Their running back might be the most underrated player in the country. This guy is ridiculous. This guy's an NFL starter. They have at running back. He is really, really good. Bijan, whatever, right? I don't know what his name is. Is that his name? He is really freaking good, man. Like I don't watch the game with the sound, so I don't always get, these things. But it's like when you see a guy that does what this guy does, man, pretty good. So Dylan Gabriel is questionable for this game. If he plays, I really like Oklahoma on the money line, but without him playing, I still like Oklahoma on the money line in that game against Texas. Steve Sarkisian in a big game is just a bad spot for him. Ruffalo, what's your favorite deep fried food for the Texas State Fair? They pretty much can get anything deep fried at the Texas State Fair.
Anything?
Anything. They have deep fried everything at Texas State Fair. You'll see it like before the game. They'll show like the Oreos, the Reese's peanut butter cups, the everything. They show it. It's This game is at the Texas State Fair, the Texas Oklahoma game.
Deep fried Oreos are pretty good.
They used to have those at Mermaids in Vegas on Fremont Street, which is now the Circa. They closed. They took the Mermaids down. They had the deep fried Twinkie and deep fried Oreos, and they don't they closed the Mermaids down. But I might be somewhat familiar with those.
Deep fried Mars bar.
Yeah, they have those. They have deep fried Snickers. This Texas State Fair is game day going to be live there?
No, it's in Kansas, didn't you say, Ron?
Yeah.
Oh, they're at Kansas, so they're not going to be at the Texas State Fairgrounds. Probably because those games are on Fox.
The microphone was already deep fried.
I bet you if they were undefeated, they would be there. Those teams, but
I have to say, Chris, I had my first Mars bar the other day, and I don't like it.
yeah, I'd say Mars and Three Musketeers are. My wife and I, for Halloween, we want to get candy that we won't eat. So we were thinking Mars bars and Three Musketeers. That's exactly what we were thinking.
Is it the nougat?
What?
I guess
Sweet.
I used to love Milky Ways, but yeah, that is super sweet. I think it's just too much.
Super sweet.
I like the coffee crisp, but not Mars bar.
Oh, okay. Well, okay.
Well, Canadian chocolate's so much better.
I'm telling you, man. You bring Canadian chocolate to Mitch, it doesn't make it out of the sports book.
It's okay.
No, that just means I got to bring you double next time, so that at least you can get it back to the hotel room.
Got the next set of games: Bowling Green, Georgia State, Georgia Southern, Ohio, Akron, Cincinnati, South Florida. South Florida always seems to play Cincinnati tough. It's always like a ridiculous line. It's always on the hook, and it's always like right on that number. Central Michigan, Ball State, Northwestern, Wisconsin. At Northwestern, man, Wisconsin 2-3, firing Paul Chryst, who I've been pretty critical of for a very long time, but I didn't think he was going to get fired. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy. UAB versus Middle Tennessee. Tulane versus ECU. UMass versus Liberty. Miami of Ohio versus Kent State. Oklahoma State versus Texas Tech. Northern Illinois, Toledo. Pitt against that big-time Virginia Tech offense. Georgia versus Auburn. Brian Harsin on my list of coaches that will be fired if he doesn't beat Alabama. Navy versus Tulsa. UCLA versus Utah. Really the first test for UCLA. Ron questioned the comments about the NFL picks. What day are you releasing your rundown this week? You have been releasing it on Wednesday nights, but we decided you're going to move it back a little bit.
Yeah, I want to make sure we get some injury reports in there. So I believe it's going to be tomorrow night, unless something happens on Saturday night by the latest. But
and then going forward, you'll have a Thursday night individual, just a small rundown, right? And then a primetime Monday rundown or something, right?
Yeah, we're still in the works. We make some nice NFL coverage this season.
Nice NFL coverage. Chris, what do you think of the slot?
Well, this slot, I went back and forth on that Cincinnati USF game because I really like Cincinnati, but they've had some issues putting away USF in recent years, so I'm probably going to leave that one alone. But I do like Ball State on the money line against Central Mich. Central Mich, Daniel Richardson, quarterback, he's been banged up, and for me, you look at Ball State, just they're the better team on both sides of the football, and I think Ball State could win this one outright. You could take the points if you want, especially when you're getting the hook on the touchdown for the through the key number. But I still like Ball State on the money line in this one. I think they beat Central Mich outright. I also like UAB laying the points against Middle Tennessee. Middle Tennessee has that solid offense, but UAB's already shut down a really good offense in Georgia Southern earlier this season. They won that game 35-21. And similar sort of result I could see here from UAB. So I would lay the points with the Blazers in that one. And I also lean towards the over between Texas Tech and Oklahoma State. I think that's a game that I capped it, and I keep getting in the area of 38-35 or 41-38, so something well into the 70s, not necessarily around 69.5, where this game is currently slated. It's gone up. The total's gone up 5.5 points. And I think got to jump on it before it goes up any further. So I would lean towards the over between Texas Tech and Oklahoma State.
Ron?
Yeah, Mitch, you were mentioning how Cincinnati struggles to cover the number usually by a hook or so, and I looked at the numbers last 7 meetings, excuse me, between these two teams. Cincinnati 0-6-1 against the number,
Yeah, I'm
and
telling you,
including their
man.
last
It's like
four where they were
I think
double-digit favorites.
I think I've been on him all 7 times.
The last 4 meetings, double-digit favorites, and they're 0-3-1 in those games against numbers. So give me the points for USF. I think it's 27.5 right now, I believe. Cincinnati's quarterback, Ben Bryant, has talent, but he certainly has some issues. I've seen him play quite a bit. I think wouldn't be surprised to see an interception or two by the USF defense, and that might be enough for a cover. I've seen some turnover issues with Cincinnati's offense this year. So give me the points with USF. Give me the over in that Georgia State, Georgia Southern game. It's a high total for a reason. I think both defenses are just not where they need to be against the run. We've seen the last 2 weeks, Georgia State against the run. Now, granted, they faced Army last week, so you're naturally going to give up a good amount, but they still gave up 354 yards, a total rushing offense, 5.1 yards per carry. The week before, against another typical option team, 270 yards to Coastal Carolina, 540 total yards. Defense just not where they need to be. Georgia Southern this season, 5.5 rushing yards per carry allowed, 200 yards per game. Both defenses just not where they need to be. Give me the over. And I'm going to take. I got my binoculars out again. Where is UMass this week? Wait a second. They're playing at home. And actually, last week they covered on the road, so you got to give them credit. But they're playing at home. Give me the points with UMass at home. They haven't been a very good road team against the spread, but at home, they actually haven't been too bad. And their first home game this season, they were dogs. They were disrespected by the books against Stony Brook, one of my teams up there on Long Island. But 20-3, they won the game by 17 points. They were getting 3.5. How dare the books? And how dare the books making Liberty a 24.5-point favorites in this one? Give me the UMass Minutemen against the spread, and sprinkle a little bit on the money line if you want to go crazy.
I think this is a really tough time slot. Normally, I like the 3:30 p.m. time slot, but I think this week is really, really tough. I think Georgia maybe slaughters Auburn in this one. I think Harsin, like I said, on his way out. He's not one of them, So it's like they don't even have to hold on to him. Like Gus Malzahn, they held on to because he had the record against Saban, but no reason for them to hold on to Harsin. And I think this UCLA-Utah game, 64.5, man. I like the under in this thing. UCLA's got a pretty good run defense. That's why they're winning football games, is their run defense. They're always thinking of, everyone always thinks Chip Kelly and the Chip Kelly offense and everything. Let me see where they're at. They're ninth in the nation against the run, allowing just 85 yards per game. That's why they are where they are. Meanwhile, Utah, great against the pass. This is going to be very, very tough to move the football. I like the under 64.5. I think you can go half of that number. Really, I think you go under 40 in that thing, or less. 40 is not half of 64.5, but you guys know what I'm saying. I also, like I said, I don't love this slot. Probably Pitt Virginia Tech under also, just because I don't think Virginia Tech's going to score. We go to our next slot. I would love to bet on Northwestern against Wisconsin, but I know Wisconsin does have athletes, and because I don't believe in college, the coaching change has the impact of the NFL. And normally, up until maybe a couple of years ago, firing a coach mid-season in college was not something that you ever saw. It was always done after the season. They only started the mid-season because recruiting starts so early now. Signing day and everything is so early. It used to be, signing day was in February, and you had time if you waited to the end of the season to fire your coach. But now they don't. They do it during the regular season because you can't. If you fire your coach during the regular season, right, you can't really go out and replace him with a viable coaching candidate. You're going to have an interim. It's not like the NFL where D'Amico Ryans is waiting in the wings, which maybe Wisconsin goes after him. I don't know. Someone's gonna. I'd take him. I'd take him at either of my Miami teams, that's for sure. Man, he's just got that defense revved up. You got Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance as your quarterback, and you still managed to win 2 football games. That's crazy. That's a really good defense. Anyways, back to the college game. We've got Georgia Tech taking on the Dukies. Georgia Tech fresh off that win last week against Pitt. Got Vandy taking on Ole Miss. Ole Miss 5-0, 1 game away from bowl eligibility. Got Miami against North Carolina. Miami has not played since that loss to Middle Tennessee. And North Carolina coming off that first loss of the season, getting blitzed by Notre Dame. The North Carolina defense is hideous. Arizona State versus Washington. Michigan State, a really bad year. 26.5-point dogs at home against Ohio State. Got to be one of the bigger spreads in recent years. UTSA versus Western Kentucky. Chris, any of these?
I'm going to go with Duke laying the points against Georgia Tech. Following up wins well is not something that Georgia Tech is used to doing. 1-11 against the spread in their last 12 games following a straight-up win. And I think Duke is getting a little bit disrespected here. I really like the job that Mike Elko's done with the Blue Devils since taking over. Riley Leonard, solid quarterback. I just think Duke is just a better team here. So I like Duke to win this one by at least a touchdown. And I also like Ohio State laying the big number against Michigan State. It is a massive number considering, this is a well-coached Michigan State team with Mel Tucker. But Ohio State is just taking no prisoners right now. They need to, keep the foot on the gas. They're looking for style points wherever they can get them. And more importantly, Ohio State's just absolutely dominated Michigan State in the last couple of meetings between these two teams head-to-head. Ohio State's won the last 2 meetings combined 108-19. So I'm going to lay the points with Ohio State here. 5-0 against the spread in the last 5 meetings. I think they make it 6 here.
Ron?
To go further into your point, Chris, the last 5 meetings between Ohio State, Michigan State, Ohio State's 5-0 against the spread. So that means Michigan State's 0-5 against the spread. And the last time that Ohio State was this big of a favorite, I believe they're 26.5-point favorites right now. The last time they were 27.5-point favorites back in 1998. And Michigan State actually won that game outright, I believe, or at least covered the spread. It was 28-24 in 1998. So I like Ohio State. I also lean towards the over as well, though. I think both teams' offenses. Michigan State's defense against the pass is just not there. It wasn't there last year. It's not there this year. Giving up a ton of yards through the air, a ton of points as well. And but I do think Michigan State could add a few garbage time touchdowns. Their offense is still solid, and I think we get over this total at 65 points. I also like Miami to bounce back after that upset loss to Middle Tennessee. You go on the bye week, and I think this is a really good spot for Miami, actually. I think if some people that like spots, this is a really good one. You're coming off back-to-back losses, but you get that bye week. I trust Cristobal, head coach, and we saw Mitch mentioned his defense from North Carolina, not very good at all. I think Miami's a lot better than what we've seen. They've had one of the better recruiting classes in the country this year, and I think there's just a lot of talent in this team. And I think it's going to take a while. It's a new coaching staff and a new system, but I still think this program is in good shape overall. So I like Miami to win this game by a touchdown.
I like Miami as well against Carolina. Tyler Van Dyke will be back in at quarterback. They benched him last game, put in Garcia, who actually looked pretty good, as a backup. And, he was definitely the more highly regarded quarterback coming in. And Miami really hitting the recruiting trail hard. They're going to be good under Cristobal. It's just, getting his guys in there. It's going to take a little bit. And you're going to see some of those deficiencies like we saw last time out against Middle Tennessee. Those are going to happen. And, college football, a lot of it has to do with getting your guys in there to fit your system, and I think that Miami will do that. I think it will start with, Cristobal doing the way that Jimmy Johnson did it at Miami, and that is in Howard Schnellenberger, and that's putting a fence around Dade County and saying, keeping those guys home. If you can keep the guys home from Dade and Broward County, you will win the national championship. That really is what it comes down to, and Howard Schnellenberger proved that, and Jimmy Johnson proved it as well. You win the state of Miami, you win the national championship. And I do believe that Cristobal will be able to do that. He's a Miami guy. He's from Miami. He played at Miami. He won a national championship at Miami, and he will win a national championship as a coach at Miami. Just won't be this season. I do think that it will start with the recruiting trail. We saw it last year. They had more top 300, ESPN top 300 recruits than any other team in the nation, Miami did, and they are on track to do the same thing again this season. They might not have the number 1 guy and the number 2 guy, but they have the most in the top 300. And it's like, that's how you build it, the depth and that. And that's how they've done it before. Ed Reed was like the 75th ranked safety in the state of Florida. It's like, this is how you do it. This is how you do it. And they will continue to do it. And I really like Jonathan Vilma was a throw-in. They took Jonathan Vilma because they wanted Frank Gore. And Frank Gore, they both played at Gables High School in Dade County. And they wanted Frank Gore. They took Jonathan Vilma, his teammate. This is what happens. This is how you build championships. Anyways, Washington's not going to win a championship anytime soon because they can't win on the road. They're one of the worst road teams out there when it comes to covering the spread. Emory Jones looked like a different man last week against USC. Yeah, they didn't win the game, but that was the best I've seen him play ever. And I think it was the best we've seen Arizona State play in a long time. But Washington, absolutely terrible, terrible, terrible road team. They are 1-6 against the number in their last 7 on the road, 3-11 against teams with a losing record, and 3-10 against the number in the Pac-12. Yeah, so I'll lay points with them on the road. I don't think so. I'm taking Arizona State, which I tell you what, if I had a chance to go to college again, would definitely be on my short list of places where I would want to go. Arizona State, Wisconsin. Oh man, things that you learn, many years after the fact. But I like Arizona State in that one. That Michigan State, Ohio State, you just can't touch it. UTSA, Western Kentucky, that's one for the fans. I do like games though that have a total over 10 touchdowns.
Oh yeah, that should be a great game.
Yep, you got a total over north of 10 touchdowns. I'm in.
A rematch of their bowl game, I believe, last year.
Sure, it was a big week at Western Kentucky with the
conference final. Yeah, you're right.
You guys are both big on the Patriots QB from Western Kentucky.
Bailey Zappi.
Yep, Ruffalo as well. So I'm sure it was a big week at Western Kentucky with Zappi getting in and playing pretty well.
Zip zap Zappi.
Got Utah State against Air Force. Texas State against App State. I couldn't even get through the video on this one, so there's no Texas State App State video this week. I just couldn't. I tried it like 6 times. I couldn't do it. FIU versus UConn, not a game we would
do a video on that one?
No. Hey, UConn's coming off a win, so.
And they're favorites.
Yeah, they're road favorites.
Against an FBS team.
It happens. Jim Mora Jr. doing a hell of a job there at UConn. 2-4, man. Who would have thunk it? Troy versus, they're 4 games away from bowl eligibility. If they get the win here, they're halfway home. Troy,
you got to beat UMass. They play UMass at home.
Yeah, so that'll put them at 4. They'll need 2 more wins.
So you're saying there's a chance?
There is a chance. The Ron Romanelli Troy Trojans up against Southern Miss. New Mexico against Wyoming. These teams, not bad. Not bad. Especially New Mexico, who's getting points in this one. La Tech against UTEP. Everyone jumped off the UTEP bandwagon just in time for them to win again last week. James Madison, the story of stories, right? Can you be bowl eligible your first year of FBS? I think that they don't let them do it their first year.
Yeah, I don't think they are. So.
Yeah, because they would be in Ark State versus JMU. Let's see. We'll do the 7:30s as well. USC, Washington State, BC, Clemson. BC coming off of the big win last week. Iowa State versus Kansas State. I think Iowa State's one of the more overrated teams out there now. Notre Dame, BYU in Vegas. Kentucky, South Carolina, Illinois, Iowa. Illinois, the 3.5-point favorite in this one. If you would have gone back to week 1 and said, that Illinois was going to be 3.5-point favorite over Iowa, not many people would believe you. Wake versus Army, 2 teams that wear the same color uniforms. Chris.
Yeah, I'm staying away from that one, and I don't want to end up rooting and cheering for the wrong team. It's happened
I
before,
do it
but
all the time.
I'm going to go with Kansas State. Laying the 2 points or on the money line, whichever you want. But I just like you said, I think Kansas State just a better team. Your Iowa State, one of the more overrated teams in the country, and they play at a really slow pace, which is not something that we're seeing from Kansas State all that much. I think Kansas State gonna try to push the pace a little bit, and if they get up the Wildcats, it's gonna make Matt Campbell's team really uncomfortable because Iowa State, like I said, they like to play slow and methodical, and well, all of a sudden Adrian Martinez moves the ball down the field, and you can't play slow and methodical anymore. So I like Kansas State to make the Cyclones uncomfortable, get a win in that one, win it by at least 4 or 5 points. So give me Kansas State in that one. And I'm also going to lay the points with Illinois. I want no part of Iowa's offense. I mean, I get they played the tougher competition, but Illinois, they've been holding their own and they've been running the ball fairly well. This is going to be a true test for Illinois against this Iowa defense, but Illinois is still the top scoring defense in the country. Again, maybe it's the we have to compare competition, but still, I like what I've seen from Illinois so far. So give me the Illini and the points, laying the points in that one.
Iowa 123rd in the nation rushing the football. Ron?
So I'm guessing that Will Levis is out for Kentucky because the line dropped to 6.
Yeah, it sure looks like it. Or it could be Rodriguez. Again.
I don't think Rodriguez would move the line 4 points.
No, I don't think so either.
So I'm guessing Levis.
He had a concussion, right?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, he was knocked out.
Oh, I think he did get banged up in that game.
Yep.
So that might be very well what's happening. I like South Carolina, whether he's playing or not.
Undisclosed.
That
could be gonorrhea.
I like South Carolina. I'd sprinkle a little bit on the money line. I do think Kentucky's a little bit overrated. I would say actually a good amount overrated. I actually was laughing a little bit last week seeing they were ranked 7th in the country. I just don't even know how that's possible. This team's good. They're just not at that level yet. This is still a basketball school. And I think South Carolina last 2 weeks, their offense has really showed up. Now let's see who they played. Charlotte and South Carolina State, but still, Spencer Rattler still has some talent. I think the offense does enough here and has a chance to win this game, whether Levis is playing or not. I'd take this 10 points if he's playing, 6 points if he's not, and sprinkle a little bit on the money line.
Now, you give me a Stoops defense against Spencer Rattler, I'll take my chances any day of the week, especially laying less than a touchdown. When you look at South Carolina and the games that they've won, they're all against non-SEC teams. They're against the drag teams. Yeah, give them South Carolina State or Charlotte and their money, but you put them up against the SEC teams, you get the floor wiped with them, on a regular basis. So I'm not feeling it on South Carolina. 48-7 against Georgia, 44-30. Against the Hogs, and that was in Fayetteville, though. They were 9-point dogs in that one. Didn't get a whiff of a cover. I can't stand Spencer Rattler. I enjoy betting against him. He'll be buying me a new boat this year. We've got I kind of like BYU Notre Dame, the over maybe in that game. I think that Notre Dame's going to run the football effectively. I've seen these Shamrock Series games before, and it just always seems to go in Notre Dame's favor. I like BYU in the game, but it's like not enough to bet on them because I've seen these Shamrock Series games, and it's like I've been at these Shamrock Series games. I was at the Miami Notre Dame at Soldier Field in Chicago, and it was ridiculous. Nothing fun about it being the non-Shamrock team. I think Washington State's got a nice shot at USC outright as well on the road. I think USC is the paper champion, and I think when you look at Lincoln Riley's defenses, that's usually where the hole is, and they are 85th in the nation against the run. So if you can't stop the run, you can't win conference games on a consistent basis. You cannot do it. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're Lincoln Riley. This is why Lincoln Riley in Oklahoma never won national championships and got blitzed in big games. It could never beat Kansas State either. He couldn't beat Kansas State either at Oklahoma. It's because he can't stop the run. Washington State does not run the football, but they do run that little dunk pass pretty effectively. And, while they're ranked 31st in the nation in passing, these days, a lot of these passes really are runs. They're just extended handoffs. And I think Washington State does that effectively. I like the Washington State run defense. Do not like their pass defense, but I think this is one of those games, man. It's like you're getting a ton of points in this thing. I mean, ridiculous amount of points. Washington State has one loss this year. It's Oregon. They've played a tough schedule, too. I don't know. I don't see it. I like Kansas State against Iowa State also. Iowa State just bores me to tears. I liked Matt Campbell a few years ago. He should have probably taken one of those other coaching offers that he had at the time. Kind of like Kirk Ferentz had like all those NFL offers, and everything. He never took them, and then it was like, it's too late. Couldn't take them. They weren't there anymore. I think Clemson's pretty freaking good. Again. It's like, it's amazing, man. It'll be interesting to see how they are when Dabo leaves for the Alabama job. Louisiana Monroe against Coastal Carolina. NC State, fresh off a trip to Death Valley last week, taking on Florida State this week. Usually, it's always been a really good game, Florida State, NC State. Alabama against Texas A&M. Rumblings of Jimbo Fisher and discontent there. It's a tough spot, right? Because you're on the hook for $10 million a year with this guy and guaranteed money, and it's long term, his contract. And the thing is, on top of that, is that he had that massive recruiting class, and it's hard enough to keep players with the transfer portal as it is. Can you imagine, like, if you fire your head coach, how hard it's going to be to keep those players? Oh man, it's a very, very tough spot for Texas A&M in that. What are they ranked offensively? 198th out of 130 teams or something. They are ranked 109th in points scored this season. They averaged 21.8 points per game, going to Tuscaloosa to take on the Tide, who are averaging 48.4 points per game. I say good luck. Have a nice time at Bryant-Denny on Saturday night under the lights, right? Arizona taking on Oregon. The Ducks have found a new gear after that Georgia game. Maybe they'll get another crack at Georgia if they keep playing the way they have been playing. Usually, if you lose early, all is forgiven. Boise State versus Fresno State. These are two teams that generally used to be good. This year, not so good. I think Boise's a little better without Hank Bachmeier to kick around. I miss Hank already. San Diego State versus Hawaii and Stanford versus Oregon State. Chris, you miss Hank Bachmeier a little bit?
I was just about to say, maybe I should call him. I don't know.
Call Hank, see what he's doing. He's in the portal. He's in the portal physically.
He'll be going to ULM.
Is that where he's going?
No, but I'm just guessing.
I think ECU is where
he's
you
going
go.
to go FIU.
ECU. Don't disrespect that program.
Yeah, but look at the quarterback that they've had for the last 4 years.
Holton Ahlers is good. Don't talk about Holton Ahlers. 15-3 touchdown interception ratio, 69% completion percentage. What more do you want from the guy?
Well, so a couple of wins against varsity programs. Chris,
what are you talking about? They were a 2 field goal attempts away from beating NC State. And they took down an Old Dominion team that beat Virginia Tech. How dare you?
ODU.
Listen, they played Tulane this week. My Pirates are coming into Tulane.
And soon you'll have Hank Bachmeier to kick around.
We're shipping Hank Bachmeier to FIU.
I think
FIU generally is
ULM.
good. FIU is generally a lot better than this.
Yeah.
The Golden Panthers of FIU.
Someone sent me the effing loser pussy email, but they spelled loser wrong, so it kind of loses a lot of the oomph.
Did it have 2 O's, so now it's looser?
Yes, looser.
Oh, you don't want to be a looser pussy. That's not good.
Effing looser pussy. Well, thanks for being a fan, Daniel Thomas Kerrigan. Appreciate the kind words.
Jeez, not as tight as I used to be. You don't have to call me out like that. God damn.
I wonder if he feels better about himself.
Definitely helped help.
Makes me sad. I feel sad. I haven't been this sad since Levis called in sick with gonorrhea.
gives a new meaning to Big Blue.
Ay.
I can't believe I went there. I'm gonna take I was gonna take Alabama, but I want to confirm that Bryce Young's gonna be playing before laying this big number. I know it's Texas A&M and it's going up against this Alabama defense at night at Bryant-Denny, but I'd feel a lot better about it with Bryce Young over the backup quarterback Milrose. So I'm gonna go
because
I'm gonna lean
Alabama
towards-
doesn't because Alabama doesn't.
I'm not saying they don't. I just feel more comfortable with Bryce Young at quarterback. I think he opens up the playbook a little bit more. But again, it's just personal preference for me. But Florida State, I was leaning towards Florida State. They have struggled against NC State in the past, 3-17-1 against the spread in the last 21 head-to-head meetings. But I really like this Florida State team, so I would consider taking the points with FSU, especially if it could go back up to 3.5. But
they looked so bad last week. They looked so bad.
They did, but
it was Sam Hartman.
Don't pin this one on Hartman, damn it.
But it was Sam Hartman.
I mean, Florida State, they have gone, to away from home and won a couple of big games this season. Obviously, they beat Louisville. They beat LSU on that neutral field. So I think they can hang with NC State. Not my strongest play on the board, but I do lean towards FSU there. And I really like Oregon laying the points against Arizona. I think Oregon's clicking right now. And as much as, I liked what Arizona's done in spots this season, especially when they beat up on San Diego State, I think Oregon's just a far better team here. So give me Oregon to run it up against Arizona in this one.
Ron?
Yeah, I like Florida State as well. I think they're going to win the game outright. I just not the biggest fan personally of Devin Leary. I know the stats. I'm a stats guy, and the stats don't really agree with me. Last year he had a 36-5 touchdown interception ratio, one of the better quarterbacks in the ACC. This year he's off to a good season, but I just watched a good amount of him, and for some reason I just don't think he is as highly touted as he should be. And I think Florida State's offense, last week obviously was not their greatest showing. But this is a team on the rise, a program on the rise. I think Jordan Travis is a good enough quarterback he's played in a couple of tough environments on the road already. I think he competes here. I think the defense has really improved from where we've seen it in years past, and I think Florida State wins the game outright. And I think San Diego State beats. I think Hawaii's definitely in that conversation for the worst team in FBS this year.
Definitely.
I think they will. I think they are the worst team.
Well,
I don't know.
They'll get their chance against some of these other teams.
It's like a round robin tournament.
They will. They'll get their shot against Colorado State and Nevada.
That's true. But this week, you look at Hawaii's run defense. They're giving up 7 yards per carry, 6.9 yards per carry. I mean, it's got to be the worst in the league, in the country. I'm not sure, not in terms of total yards per game, but 6.9 yards per carry. You got San Diego State's offense, which can only run the football. They've earned over 100 passing yards once this season, and that was against Idaho State, an FCS school. So they cannot throw the ball. They can run the football decently, 5.1 yards per carry, 192 yards per game on the ground. So I think you got the biggest strength for the San Diego State's offense, the biggest weakness for the Hawaii defense, matched with the fact that Hawaii's offense isn't doing much this year either. And San Diego State's defense, although it's not as strong as we've seen in years past, still good enough here. Give me San Diego State in a blowout.
Wolfpack are very tough at home. At Florida State, NC State game, oh man, it's probably a 3-point game anyway. Slice it one way or the other. I think I don't care who's playing quarterback for Alabama. They're going to slaughter Texas A&M. You got a quarterback that can't move the football down the field. He's not going to be able to move it down the field against Alabama. I expect the Tide, regardless of who's playing quarterback, to be on a short field all night in that game in Tuscaloosa. Nick Saban will be watching that student section, make sure no one's leaving early because it's going to be one of those blowout central. And I tell you what, Nick, I'm changing the channel. I dare you to come to my living room and take my TV from me. Anyways, we mentioned about how bad Hawaii is, but I think you can't mention stink without Stanford. They are absolutely terrible this season. This is the worst Stanford team I've ever seen, and I've seen a lot of bad Stanford teams, but this one is really bad. They are the worst team at turning the ball over on offense. They are one of the worst teams at getting turnovers. They've gotten 2 turnovers all season long as far as the defense goes. They are 124th against the run, 116th in points allowed. Good luck. You're going to get your ass kicked. Real bad. Because this Oregon State team isn't bad. They're not. You look at their 2 losses, it's, USC and Oregon or something? Not Oregon, USC and Utah. No shame in that. The loss at Utah, 42-16 at Utah. That one, the Utes were just going downhill in that thing. We've seen that happen before. But the USC game was 17-14. They covered.
To Stanford's credit, they've also played USC, Washington, and Oregon as well. 2 road games against Washington and Oregon.
45-27, 40-22, 41-28 against USC, and 41-10 against Colgate. So those stats also go into it. Let's take a look and see what. Let's take a look at those Colgate numbers. During that Colgate game.
They were -3 in the turnover battle, but they still won the game by 31 and outgained it by almost 300 yards. Turnover problems.
Anything else you guys want to add for this week's show? All right.
I'm selling my I Love UMass t-shirts on the website.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow morning with our live show. And, of course, Saturday morning we'll have our college football round table for college football week 6. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Make it a winning day. We appreciate each and every one of you. And we'll be back next week for this show. Same bat time, same bat channel.